Is the generational divide killing us? I've seen a lot of analysis lately about how we used to talk about things in terms of decades. We used to talk about like the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Remember that? Like disco versus rock versus like the hippie stuff that we had in the 90s. And now we don't talk about things that way. We don't have shared experience. Instead, we talk about generational differences. So we talk about like Gen Z versus Gen Alpha versus the baby boomers versus Gen X. And it's all about this division, which is so indicative of our society as a whole. What I am really interested in, as somebody who has taught Gen Z for the last half decade as a college professor, and then also I'm a mom. I have a 16-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 12-year-old. So I have like Gen Zers and Gen Alpha all in my face all the time. Gloriously, I love my kids. But they experience the world so fundamentally differently than we did. And I don't think that it's not a bad thing, but it's definitely not a good thing. It's a different thing. It's hard to like parse, right? But what I really like to break down is three ways that I've observed Gen Z are exploring the world and experiencing the world. The first thing I want to talk about is emotion. My experience with Gen Z is that they are much more aware of their emotions than we were. I'm an elder millennial born in 1981, so I'm in that like little tiny generation, whatever. These are all made up anyway, y'all. But I'm in that little tiny generation, and we did not talk about our feelings the way that they do. And the crazy thing is that, like, this is something that we have infused into them. This is something that we, as Gen X and millennial parents, were missing in our lives. We were missing the way that people would talk about emotions and talk about tough things. And now our kids are actually talking about these things, and everybody is like, whoa, 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 you're talking about your feelings too much. You're too concerned about mental health. What? What in the hell are y'all talking about? We were griping about the fact that we weren't taken seriously when we were younger. And now you have these people, these young folks who have this, I mean, it's therapy speak. They have all of this therapy speak. They have this means to talk about their emotions, and we're still not taking them seriously. So we're just like repeating the same thing again, which is really incredibly frustrating to me. The other thing I wanted to talk about was like the information overload that Gen Z has. When, if we remember, y'all, we had to go look things up in a library, in physical books. And now not every bit of human knowledge is available on Google, but there's a lot of information available on Google that you can find at 2 o'clock in the morning. When we were teenagers, if I wanted to like figure out like, oh my gosh, I have this pimple, is it cancer? Right? Like you couldn't go like look that up at 2 o'clock in the morning. You just had to roll over and go back to bed. But these kids, they wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning like, oh my gosh, is this a zit or is it cancer? And they can go Google that. And there is a lack of ability to process because they have so much access. And so do the rest of us. Part of the issue here is that we all have all of this access. We all have this ability to like grab information at any time, any day, whether it's healthy or not. It's here to stay and it's not going anywhere. Like, are y'all putting your phones down? So why are we expecting Gen Z to put their phones down? It's really frustrating. But the information overload is huge. We think about the cultural touchstones that we had when we were younger, and they were universal, right? It goes back to that decades thing where everybody had the same experience. We used to talk about the 70s and disco is alive, and then disco is dead. Remember that, y'all, when like people hated bell bottoms, and then Kendrick Lamar wore bell bottoms at the Super Bowl, and everybody lost their mind. I know all the millennial women I know have lost their mind about Kendrick Lamar's bell bottoms at the Super Bowl. We have this, like, we do have some shared experiences, but they're still not even universal. When I ask my students about the Super Bowl, they know it from memes. A lot of them didn't watch it. So they have kind of a shared experience, but not to the extent that we did. And I think that goes down to the degradation of community, which comes from this access to information. I really, really see that. Young people want community. They want to identify as something. And we see this in how, as young people, when we were growing up, those same mental health things that we so like wanted to be heard, now kids are heard. And so there's not cliques. It's not like the goth kids and the preppy kids and the football kids. There's not different divides. There's not band kids and theater kids. they see themselves as all kids, which is great because it allows them to be open to all kinds of things. But at the same time, that openness means that they don't have a cohesive community. They don't form those tight knit groups. The university that I teach at right now has a really strong Greek culture. And so I do see that with students who are in Greek culture. They find community, they have people who they feel like they have their backs. And there's something really valuable about that. There's really something valuable in the students that I see who form those tight bonds through the rush process and all of that stuff. Now, there are historically other issues with Greek culture and with these things because they are inherently exclusionary, right? If you have an in, that means there has to be an out. And so the lack of community and the struggle to find community is a huge struggle that I see in both my own kids and the students that I teach across several universities. Y'all, I've not just been in one place. Now I am all in North Carolina, so that does capture what my experience is. But I feel like it's universal. From what I'm seeing across the board and talking to other professors and other parents, this lack of community is huge. But then we all are also feeling it. And I think what I'm really trying to say with all this about the generational divide is how kind of sad I am that we don't have the unifying cultural factors that we did. I identified with my mom in a lot of significant ways because we would listen to the 60s music that she loved. And it was very identifiable. It was both associated with her and it was also associated with me. And I don't feel like we have that as much. And I think the Super Bowl is a really important example of this. I've seen a lot of people like Kendrick Lamar, like, who is he? I don't know this guy. I don't know him well. He's not my generation's music, but a huge majority of the kids that I work with, young folks in the college environment, know who this guy is. They can do all the dances. And I feel like we're missing that. I really do. I feel like we're missing something in this generational divide. And all I really want to do is just take joy in the changes that they're seeing. A lot of this stuff that we are experiencing is what we wanted for our kids. And right now, here we have it. We've given it to them. Not all of it. The world is a mess, but we've given a lot to them. Like, can't we just enjoy it without tearing them up?